Hi, this is inspired by Dworkin's Ghost. We have been DMing on Twitter, on Instagram, pretty much all afternoon, and just talking about all kinds of different topics. But she said something very kind to me, that she appreciates my perspective on certain issues, and it inspired me to talk a little bit more about those issues, namely pregnancy and motherhood. I am an anti-natalist. I think that it is flat out wrong to birth children in this day and age for all kinds of reasons. For environmental reasons, this planet has more than 7 billion people on it right now. For reasons that our planet is pretty much doomed as far as climate change goes, and the idea of bringing an innocent child into the world when it's in this state, environmentally, politically, etc., seems incredibly awful. And why would you do that? I think that motherhood is bad for women, economically, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I think that there is no good reason to birth a child. I'm anti-natalist for all of those reasons, and for myself because, one, I'm a lesbian, so getting pregnant would be a very hard process, and also as a lesbian, I cannot fathom what would ever drive me to want male sperm inside of me. Disgusting. Absolutely no. But further, I can't imagine what having a child would do to my life. I have no desire to change my whole life to circle around someone else. I don't think that's wrong, and I don't think it's selfish. I like my life. I like my job. I like where I live. I like the freedom I have to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Becoming a parent means 100% of your time for the rest of your life is focused around that kid. It doesn't matter when they turn 18 that they're an adult. You don't stop being a parent. I'm 31. I do not want the rest of my life to be devoted to caring for and looking out for the well-being and the wants and the desires of someone else. No. No. Yeah. And then that brings up like the whole thing about mommy culture. There's like, I don't know, maybe it's always been this way, but I have noticed, I'd say in the last like 5 years on social media and stuff, like there's this massive like cult of the mommy, and it's like every fucking mom's Instagram bio is like Brayden's mommy, and it's like, ugh, God, have you no personality of your own anymore except for being a mommy? Yeah. And Dworkin's Ghost and I were also talking about the fact that like mothers of sons suddenly forget that they were ever feminists or even radical feminists because their sons are sweet and good and pure, and they're going to raise feminist sons. And if women could raise good men, the world would be full of good men. So that's not to say that's women's fault that men are shit. Of course it isn't. But it's like, women clearly can't do it, not for lack of trying, but because men are shit. So, yeah. But, yeah, another friend and I were talking about it once, too, how, like, oftentimes you'll get, like, women-only gatherings or radical feminist gatherings or spaces or whatever. Well, they'll say, like, boys 5 and under can be permitted. Which it's hard because on one hand, childcare is hard to come by. So women may not be able to attend these kinds of events if they can't bring their children due to their economic status or just not having someone who can look after their kid, like, so that sucks. I understand that. But on the other hand, little girls under 5 also deserve spaces free of little boys. Little boys are unfortunately violent and abusive and even sexually abusive to little girls. So yeah, I don't think that boy children should be permitted in women only spaces either. And I'm talking about like festivals and events and stuff. Like obviously in the women's bathroom, like moms have to bring their small sons in with them because they can't go in the men's room alone. Like we get that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like things that are specifically a women focused event or space or gathering with radicalism and feminism and womanhood in mind. Those kinds of spaces should not be permitting boys of any age. Yeah, I know I've talked about a few different kinds of things around motherhood in this video. But I just ramble. Yeah, I'm sure more things are going to come to mind as soon as I finish this, so that's how it usually goes for me. But yeah, I think motherhood is bad for women and it's bad for the earth, and gay women or straight women, I think, should not be having children. There are so many children who need homes and loving, supportive parents. So if you're determined to raise a child and be a parent, then fucking adopt a kid who desperately needs that. This bizarre world we live in where it's biological children or bust is insane to me. And even further, as lesbians, I cannot grasp the idea of a lesbian willingly being inseminated by sperm. That's disgusting. Yeah. Yeah. Dworkin's Ghost and I also talked about like women who came to radical feminism later in life after like marrying men or having children or whatever, and like that's a different topic altogether. But like certainly women come to radical feminism later in life after husbands and children, and that doesn't make them less radical feminists. It doesn't make them less than. It doesn't make them not radical feminists. But I think that if you are a woman who has a husband or has male children and you've come to radical feminism later in life after those things have happened, you have to work that much harder on your radical feminism. You have to really, really critically look at your choices and the men in your life and the what's the word? Not excuses, but like the leeway, I guess, that you give them because of that pre-existing love or maternal bond that you might have for that man, whether it's a child or a husband. Because radical feminism means putting women first in your life and focusing your efforts on women. So that includes women who may have been assaulted or harassed or raped by your husbands and sons. Obviously, you're not responsible for those actions. Never would you be responsible for those actions. But you are responsible for how you react to those actions and whether or not you're going to choose the men in your life over the women they've harmed. So that's something to think about. And, you know, as a lesbian and a childless woman, certainly it's easier for me because I don't have men in my life, but I think that's also an important part of radical feminism, is to stop having men in your life. Obviously, if you're a mother to male children, that's like, you're not just going to stop being their mom, but making the steps to lead a female-focused and centered life is key to radical feminism. So, yeah, and I feel like a lot of people are scared to say these things or to have these conversations, and I've seen it over and over again that, like, these topics get, like, just dogpiled on in radical feminist spaces because you have so many women who pull the not my Nigel card. But I think it's important, and I know it's going to offend some women when we say these things, but that's part of being a radical feminist too, is challenging and looking toward your own feelings and emotions about political things. The personal is political. So if you're feeling personally about something, you need to start thinking politically about why you're having those feelings.